Welcome back to TFI Global. Today we unpack the most decisive shift in transatlantic politics in decades. A geopolitical earthquake that is shaking America and Europe, and yes, even Russia. For the first time in over 20 years, the US Secretary of State will not attend a NATO foreign ministers meeting in Brussels. Marco Rubio's empty chair is not just a missing diplomat. It's a message, a warning, a signal that the world's most powerful military alliance is entering its most uncertain era ever. And if that wasn't enough, the United States Pentagon has cut off working-level communication with Germany's defense ministry. No calls, no coordination, no texts, nothing. A strategic silence, one that could redraw the global balance of power. This is the story of how NATO suddenly found itself standing on the edge of a cliff. When The Atlantic published its bombshell report quoting German Lieutenant General Christian Freuding, European officials were stunned. Freuding revealed that communications which once flowed day and night between Washington and Berlin had gone completely silent. No explanations, no warnings, just a deadline. Germany, the economic engine of Europe and a key pillar of NATO, suddenly found itself unable to reach anyone at the Pentagon. Berlin officials were reportedly forced to use embassy contacts in Washington just to find someone, anyone, willing to pick up the phone. This isn't a glitch, it is a strategy, a deliberate tactical freeze, and the timing could not be more explosive. To understand the silence, we look at what's happening behind the scenes. The Trump administration has been pushing a new peace plan for the Russia-Ukraine war, a plan that many European officials say favors Moscow. Several arms shipments to Ukraine were suspended without informing Germany. Internal sources say this was Washington's way of pressuring Europe. A German diplomat put it, the US is no longer consulting, it is dictating. Germany, under incoming Chancellor Friedrich Merz, has been hesitant to embrace a peace framework that might force Ukraine into concessions. To Washington, that hesitation looks like defiance. So the message that if Berlin won't align, Washington will stop talking. For decades, Europe relied heavily on US intelligence, logistics, and strategic planning. Germany's much promoted Zeitenwende, its pledge to rebuild its military, has moved slowly. The uncomfortable truth? Germany still depends on the United States for much of its operational capacity. With communication severed, that dependence turns into vulnerability. NATO relies on synchronized US-German coordination for everything, from troop movement to air defense planning. Without it, the alliance develops blind spots, dangerous ones, especially near the Eastern Europe and the Baltic states. If Berlin and Washington aren't speaking, NATO isn't functioning. This silence is not just diplomatic but operational. Here is where the story becomes truly astonishing. On December 2nd, just a day before NATO's key summit, Trump's personal envoy Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner met Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. No NATO representatives, no Europeans, not even Ukraine. This was the sixth such meeting this year. These sessions are where the real negotiations are happening. The revised US peace framework drafted largely between American and Russian teams. This undermines NATO's central principle, collective decision-making. Meanwhile, in Brussels, NATO ministers wait, discussing Ukraine's membership pathway, which has seen no progress for years. But the decisions, the deals, the future of the war, those conversations are happening far from Brussels, in a Moscow conference room. Europe isn't in the room. Europe isn't even invited. For the first time in its history, NATO faces three parallel diplomatic tracks. Track 1. Washington and Moscow decide the framework. Track 2. Washington and Kyiv negotiate the details. And Track 3. Europe learns what happened through the leaks. This is unprecedented. NATO, once the symbol of transatlantic unity, is now divided into insiders and outsiders. Even more symbolic is the absence of Marco Rubio. Instead, the US is sending Christopher Landau, a deputy known for once saying that NATO is a solution in search of a problem. To European ears, that sounds like downgrading the alliance. And the silence from the Pentagon, it reinforces the message. Washington is shifting priorities. Europe can either follow or be left behind. Caught in this geopolitical reshuffling is Ukraine. Germany has been one of Kyiv's biggest supporters, but without coordination with Washington, the architect of weapons pipelines deliveries may slow, duplicate or become disorganized. Meanwhile, the leaked US-Russia peace plans have included no NATO membership for Ukraine, limits on its military, territorial concessions in the east. Kyiv rejected these terms outright. Europe rejected them too. But Washington appears ready to negotiate and Russia sees an opportunity. What happens next will define European security for decades. Europe now faces a choice, either to accept a US-designed architecture where Europe is a secondary player or build true strategic autonomy, militarily, economically and politically. Both paths lead away from the NATO everyone once knew, because the truth is that NATO is not ending, but its foundations are changing fast. Power is shifting, priorities are shifting, and alliances built in the 20th century are being tested in the 21st. The United States is no longer automatically Europe's protector. Europe is no longer automatically America's partner. And Russia, once the alliance's greatest threat, has now become a central player in negotiations shaping Europe's future. As Freuding's words echo across European capitals, one thing becomes transparent, that for the first time in generations, Berlin must decide how to act when Washington stops answering the phone. This is not just a diplomatic freeze, it is a strategic realignment, a recalibration of global power, and a moment that could redefine NATO or shatter it. The world order created in 1949 is being rewritten, not in Brussels or Washington, but in Moscow, and NATO's future hangs in the balance. Thanks for watching.